What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I'm going to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, the QQQ, Nvda, and many tickers out there. I'm going to talk about this critical level that Tesla's at right now that's going to be very important for tomorrow. What happened with Jerome Powell speaking today and what's going on with the data coming out. And also the news affecting Tesla alongside more data for the stock. I'm also going to talk about the data affecting the options chain for SPY and what it tells us about the market for tomorrow. But before I do anything like that, before I give you guys any price predictions and talk about the levels to watch for on SPY, I do have to mention a couple of things before starting. Firstly, I am not a financial planner. Make sure you take none of this as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire Tesla community as a whole. And finally, don't forget about the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo and deposit $100 into the account, you are guaranteed 5 free stocks with a $100 cash reward. The offer ends in just about 8 days, so check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. Tesla was up 1.98% for the day. It gapped down in the morning, coming down to this critical level around 248.25, very close to 247. And after Tesla got this bounce right here, it continued to push up. In my video from yesterday, I called out this possibility of Tesla forming a double bottom around 247, but I wanted to watch for confirmation first before making any claims. And you can see Tesla has almost a double bottom. I mean, we had this bottom at like 247, and we just bounced off 248, so very, very close. And we have a very nice uptrend that is still being respected right now. But the question is, will Tesla continue to pump, or is Tesla about to get a rug pull? Well, this is going to be determined based off the market and based off what we're about to see from these critical levels. Now, for SPY, things were very interesting today. We got a very nice push up in the morning before this thing started cooling off with Jerome Powell speaking. Then we started to see more volatility as time went on before Jerome Powell left the podium and the market started pushing up afterwards. So it really shows how Powell could affect the markets. And we do have some bullish signals on SPY, but the real question is, will we continue to hold up? And I will break that down in just a couple of minutes. I first have to talk about some news affecting Tesla. Now, why did the whole market sell off a bit? What did Powell say? Just very briefly, Powell was coming out and talking about the banking sector. He said that for the banking sector, the Fed may have to, increase regulations going forward. He also said that when it comes to the economy, if the economy is too strong and continues to grow at a faster rate than what the Fed is expecting, they may have to give us 2 more rate hikes to slow down inflation. He said inflation is way too hot and the Fed has a lot of work to be done. And he basically just reiterated a lot of the things he said yesterday. This caused more volatility in the market to cool off. But what's good about this is now Jerome Powell is out of the picture. We're not going to hear from him for quite a while. And now that he's gone, we just have 2 more Fed speakers for the week before we have some data. And then the market's going to have lots of free room, to continue moving. So to start us off, we have Bullard speaking tomorrow morning. Okay, that's going to affect the markets to some degree. Then we have Bostic speaking. When each of them speak, the market tends to slow down a bit. Then we have the PMI report coming out 15 minutes after the market opens. Bostic, by the way, is going to be speaking before the market opens, an hour and a half before open. And then we have the PMI report 15 minutes after open at 9:45 a.m. Eastern time. Now, the PMI report is going to be very important. If this is too hot, this would incentivize the Fed to be more hawkish because the Fed needs to slow the economy down and cause economic contractions. We want these numbers to be a little bit lower, so we're going to be waiting and seeing how this comes out. And until then, just be very patient and expect a lot of volatility during the first 15 minutes. So be careful with that. And then other than that, we just have Mester from the Fed giving one more speech at about 1:40 a.m. And then we're going to be done for the day. And then the market has a lot of free room to do what it wants after that because there aren't going to be many catalysts after that time frame. Now, as far as Tesla goes, we had some negative news that came out. Basically, Adam Jonas from Morgan Stanley came out and downgraded Tesla, saying that even though he does believe Tesla has a long-term bullish price target, he thinks Tesla's a little bit overbought in a way. And he believes that Tesla has potential to cool off a bit. And he was encouraging a lot of investors to slow down on their overall positions. He also said that instead of going and maintaining 250, he thinks Tesla's going to come down to 200 in the future. And there could be many intentions behind this because this is very coincidentally close to when Barclays made the same report. However, Adam did say he's very bullish longer term on Tesla, so it wasn't entirely like bearish in a way, but he did downgrade his shorter term target to about $200, saying Tesla is going to cool off going forward. Now, despite that, Jonas has said other things involving his downgrade on Tesla. This caused Tesla to slow down a little bit. That's why Tesla gapped down, but then Tesla ended up just remaining resilient and continued to pump as time went on. Now, some more news came out that Tesla's US inventory levels have crashed. However, I can't really report this right now because the way in which the data is being collected has changed a little bit. So I'm going to have to wait and see what the charts update from now. So for that reason, if you look at the data, like you could click on them individually and see it, but I don't really like fully trust it just yet. We can see right here that the charts have been removed temporarily because they're looking at changes that are going to be made to Tesla's inventory systems. And until then, the data will return. So right now, I don't have too much data on it just yet. I just want to wait for these changes to come out before making any claims. We need to wait for updated data that's more accurate before saying anything about it. But the last time this data came out, it was looking pretty good for Tesla. We saw lots of drops in the inventory levels. That is what many of these reports are saying. So that's a good sign for the end of the quarter. And we're going to see Tesla releasing their deliveries data by sometime next week, I believe, a little bit after next week. So in about like a week and a half to a little over a week. By the very beginning of July, it should be coming out. And that's going to be good news for Tesla. That is coming out. I believe Tesla should do well on it, but we'll have to wait and see, at least in terms of deliveries. Now, we have some more news that came out that Tesla has the top 4 rankings for the American made cars right over here from this report from cars.com. The Model Y, the Model 3, the Model X, and Model S have made the top lists. And that's very, very awesome to hear from Tesla. They're doing very, very well. They're very popular here in the USA, and they are manufactured here as an American car, technically. Yes, their parts come from other countries. Yes, there's going to be like, China involved in producing different parts and like shipping them. But at the end of the day, it still is an American car, and I still believe in Tesla's future. And it's great to see Tesla getting the attention for things like this. Now, the price price ratio for Tesla is still elevated because Tesla is still outperforming the market and still doing quite well. However, despite that, we have some new things that came out. Barclays downgraded Tesla from an overweight rating, meaning it's going to outperform the market, from that to an equal weight rating, saying it's going to perform just like the market. And that's exactly what Morgan Stanley is now saying from the analysts. And they're now downgrading Tesla a bit more, and that's part of why Tesla gapped down. But despite that, Tesla held up quite nicely and continues to show lots of strength. Tesla tends to be green about 49% of the time on Fridays, but you have to remember that this data is not always a guarantee of the future because Thursdays tend to be the weakest day, and yet Tesla was green. And Friday tends to be a 49% of the time it's green on Fridays, and Tesla was still showing lots of strength today, so that's a good sign for tomorrow. For tomorrow as well, don't forget that Tesla tends to do better during the second and also during the 4th hours of the trading day. And June tends to be a very strong month. So far for June, Tesla has been holding up nicely. It's still looking very strong overall. And we did see a big increase in the short interest. We saw about 54 million Tesla shares shorted. So please be very careful with all this information. Could Tesla get squeezed because of this? I'm sorry, could the shorts be squeezed because of this? Yes, they can. At the same time, the complete opposite could happen, and these shorts may try to fight back very hard. Volume is very good at 166 million. It's still holding up on volume, still continuing to hold up nicely. And looking at the short volume is continuing to drop as Tesla's gaining strength. Now, last but not least, let's talk about SPY just for a couple of things. Looking at the call options chain, when you look at the open interest on the call side, there's not much going on between like 436 and 437, but there is a lot of high amounts of open interest around this 440 area. Now, I don't know if we're going to go that high, but it is worth noting that the market makers may have their eye on this. But they're not as incentivized to push it very high because of where max pain is. They could just keep us at 436 and maybe even a little bit higher than that. So very mixed data, but the odds favor it not necessarily like crashing or cooling off too hard. That's very unlikely looking at this option chain on the call side. Same thing on the put side. Looking at the open interest, I mean, it's the same thing right over here where it's very unlikely it's going to be coming down very hard, but they could be, looking at these higher levels, such as getting this thing above 438 on the put side. So, it's very, very mixed data, but what's good about all of this is max pain has been downgraded to about 436. So the market makers will benefit as long as they keep SPY at current levels or higher. And the put to call ratio is 2.16. Now, what's good for the bulls, in my opinion, is the fact that there's so many puts expiring. We have about a little bit over 300,000 calls expiring, but we have over 700,000 puts expiring. The majority of positions are on the put side, and the market makers may be incentivized to try to squeeze those shorts and continue to hold the market up for that reason. So I don't really see the market crashing tomorrow. I think that's unlikely. And I am leaning more towards the market holding up or even getting another kind of like squeeze. But in order for us to get that, we need to see confirmation from these levels. Now, I mentioned to you guys earlier that we wanted to see Tesla try to hold above 265. It came just short during the close, and it did come above it during the after hours, but we have to wait and see for confirmation. And let me now break this down. So the bears out there are arguing that, oh, Tesla looks weak. Look at this head and shoulders forming. It's going to reject right here. Let's short really hard and bring Tesla down. If Tesla gets a very bad piece of news tomorrow, that is a possibility because we didn't really hold above 265. However, we did get above it during the after hours, so there is a possibility Tesla will break above 265 and continue to pump. Now, 265 is going to be confirmation of this thing showing strength, but very strong confirmation would be a break and hold above 270. If it does that, the Tesla's going to go flying up quite easily all the way up to 275 or higher. It has a lot of potential to do so based off this imbalance all the way up here. So the algorithms, right, the algorithms that are buying Tesla, pushing Tesla up, are going to be incentivized to try to push this thing up very hard if it holds above 270 because of this imbalance right here, this change in the net flow. So that tells me that the odds favor this thing showing lots of upside if it could hold 265 for tomorrow. And I think there's a good chance that that's going to happen. Now, let's talk about these levels specifically just to be safe. I'm going to go over the bull and bear cases for the markets, then break down what I think is more likely, just to be as unbiased as possible and provide you guys with a good analysis. So let's just say the bears are right. Hypothetically, right? Let's just say we get this rejection off this 265 area. This is a very important zone. If it rejects, you're going to be watching 262 to 262.5. If we break below that, watch 260. If that fails us, it's going to come all the way back down to the 250s. And there's going to be more conviction on this head and shoulders playing out on Tesla being more likely, right? We have like a left shoulder, the head's above here, and then like the right shoulder. That's going to be more likely. That would be the bearish case. And we could make our way all the way back to the mid 250s if we get a huge rejection here. So please be careful here, right? That's the more bearish case. The more bullish case would be Tesla holding above 265 and continuing to push to the upside, testing 268, making its way up to 270. If it breaks 270 and holds it, this thing has a lot of potential to push all the way up to 275 plus because of this imbalance, right? That's going to be more likely. We do have some resistance around the 272s, but it's not as strong as like 275. And Tesla has a lot of potential to continue pushing up even higher. If it breaks 275, we're most likely going to just end up testing the high very close to 280 once again. So far, it has a lot of potential. It's holding up quite nicely. I gave you guys the bullish and bearish cases, but what do I think is going to happen? What is my opinion? Well, honestly, guys, I don't know for sure because so much news could come out overnight with all these like analysts saying Tesla's a sell, get out of Tesla, this and that. But in my opinion, based off the technicals, it's looking very strong, getting a nice bounce off this trend. And because of how strong the technicals are looking on the 4-hour time frame and the fact that Tesla is, it technically did go above 265 during the after hours, and seeing the fact that there's a lot of shorts piling in and the fact that the market makers are incentivized to hold the markets up, the odds are making it more likely that Tesla's going to push up, and I'm leaning in that direction. That's going to try to break above 270 and try to get to 275. I think that's going to happen tomorrow, but I'm going to be watching for confirmation first. When it comes to like trading it or doing anything like that, you have to watch for confirmation. Don't just YOLO into a specific play. And don't forget, for the first 15 minutes, there's going to be a lot of volatility because of the PMI release that's coming out at about 9:45 a.m. Eastern time. But I am leaning more bullish on Tesla for tomorrow. Looking at the 4-hour, we're about to get a bullish cross. We're very close to doing so. And it held above the 50 EMA nicely. It looks quite nice. I am leaning more bullish, but I'm always going to be open-minded just in case. I'm going to be watching for confirmation. All right, guys. Now for SPY, what do I think is going to happen? Well, let's first talk about the bullish and bearish cases before I break anything down. If you're bullish on SPY, you're going to be watching this thing break above all this resistance around 436. If it breaks that zone, it has the potential to push up above 437 into like the 438 area. And SPX actually gives us away a lot better. So I'm going to talk about SPX actually, and then I'm going to talk about SPY because SPX has something interesting. On SPX, okay, the S&P 500, we have this gap right, I think it's right here. No, it's actually right here. Sorry. Right here around this like 43.89 area. We technically didn't fully fill this gap. We came very close to doing it. Right here, we're going to likely try to make our way up here. So the market's going to likely pump. But the question is, could we hold above this level? If we hold it, continue pumping, we're going to likely see this thing fly for 440. That's going to be very bullish if we can manage to get that pump. And in the case for SPY, I would say that if SPY manages to break and hold above 437.2 specifically, that area, which is where we had that other gap without the extended hours, it's going to most likely fly and try to get closer to 440 if it manages to hold above 437.2 and continue pumping from there. So I think the odds do favor it testing that and trying to get to at least 438. I am leaning more bullish in that direction, but you have to remember that the market makers are going to be fine as long as we close above like 436 or so. They're going to be fine with that. So it's not looking as like confident for some kind of squeeze as it was yesterday, but it's still very possible. I'm still leaning more in that direction because of how many puts there are, right? We have so many puts expiring, over 700,000 of them. So I think it's more likely the market's going to hold up or at least try to push up and get closer into the high 430s. That's the direction I'm leaning in. Now, if the bearish case plays out, just hypothetically, if there's like some bad news that comes out, if there's like a war or something unexpected, watch support at 436, 435, basically 434.46, 433. And if that fails us, we're likely going to see 432 followed by 430. But like I said before, I am still leaning more bullish. I think the market's going to hold up. There's a good chance the market's going to try to continue to push. Now for AMD, and I'm going to start to quickly go over these guys. I want to make this video quicker. If we break below 410, we're going to be watching the imbalance at 408. I'm sorry, did I say 4? I'm sorry, 110. If we break below 110, watch the imbalance around 108. And then if we try to push to the upside, watch 110 as resistance. If we break that, it has the potential to make its way back to about this 114 area. If it breaks that, watch 114 as resistance followed by 118. Right now, AMD is looking very weak, and I think the odds favor 108 first before it makes a bigger move. Neo is stuck between the 15 to 200 EMAs. Whichever direction it breaks in is going to dictate the bigger move, so watch these both very carefully. 8.8 as support and then 9 to 9.13 as resistance. I think it's going to be very tight for the time being, so we're just going to have to wait and see. Netflix is very, very flat right now. If it wants to be bullish, watch 425. If it breaks that 427, 430, then potentially 435 could come. If it breaks down, watch 420 as support, 418, followed by 416. What do I see being more likely? I mean, we did have this nice divergence that formed, and so far it's trying to base around here. So there's a good chance it's going to try to uptrend and try to get a retest of this 425 level. So we're going to be watching that very carefully. The trend has been downtrending a bit, but you could see this bullish divergence is starting to develop. So there's a good chance it's going to try to push for at least 427, then potentially 430 very soon. I am leaning more in that direction, but I'm always prepared just in case. For the QQQ, if you're bullish on the QQQ, watch 368, 370, then 372.5 and 375. If you're bearish, you're going to be watching 366, 364.64 as the next major support, 363, 362, then potentially getting all the way back down to 360 if it fails below that. Now, in my opinion, seeing how Tesla's holding up and seeing how the market's holding up, there's no sign of weakness. I think the odds favor the QQQ either holding around these levels or trying to get another push tomorrow. And we're going to likely see this thing try to make its way up to about 370, looking at the current trend and looking at the options chain. For the NASDAQ, another thing that makes me more convicted in that is the fact that the NASDAQ has a potential inverse head and shoulders, is trying to pump and fill this gap up here. It looks like it has more room to keep going. We're about to get a bullish cross on the hourly. NASDAQ may try to pump a little bit more, and there's a good chance that Tesla could help it, so could Apple and many other tickers like Nvda. SPX has a potential inverse head and shoulders structure, a potential bullish cross on the PPO right over here. It has this potential inverse head and shoulders that could push it to the gap up here, so it has more potential for upside. And we could see it go for the upper gap if it manages to hold above 43.89 to like 43.90 or around there. If that's the case, we could see it go for the second gap up to 4,400 plus. There's a high probability of that happening in my opinion, but we have to watch for confirmation if it breaks this level first. I was a lot more confident in this earlier looking at max pain, but max pain has been lowered. So, my confidence has gone down just a little bit, but it still is very possible for the market to pump, and I am still leaning in that direction, seeing how many puts there are for SPY and expiring tomorrow. The VIX is continuing to downtrend. There's no sign of this thing truly bouncing, so there's not really much to say about it. There's a bullish divergence developing, but like I said before, it's been developing for the past couple of days, and yet it continues to go lower. So there's no sign of this thing bouncing yet. Eventually, it is going to get a breakout. Eventually, it is going to break out. It just hasn't happened just yet as the market continues to show strength. The dollar is trading sideways, not really doing much. There's not much to say about it. It's not really affecting the market as much as before. Coinbase, if it wants to be bullish, it has to break and hold 60. If it fails to do so, you're going to be watching support around 55. Support's around 55, 57, and 55. If it breaks below 55, it has lots of potential for downside, but it needs to hold below it. So please watch this carefully. It could come down to like 53, then potentially down to 50. I told you guys that this thing was looking bullish. It was looking bullish for quite a while. It still is holding up. There's no true sign of this thing breaking down just yet, but it has to break 60 to get the next break to the upside. It got hit with some major resistance, so we'll have to wait and see. I think for tomorrow, it might gap down a little bit, then try to push up later on throughout the day. We'll have to wait and see how the market affects it first and see if it could actually break 60. It needs maybe a piece of news to do so, but the odds favor that being a possibility. But for now, we just have to be careful and wait for confirmation. Apple's very close to all-time highs. If it breaks the high it made today, we could see 187.5 to be tested, potentially even the next high it made, or like the previous high, I mean the all-time high. If it breaks that, we could see this thing get closer to about 187.5, then potentially 190 after that. That is a possibility for Apple. Apple had a bullish divergence that developed, and it's still playing out nicely. There's not really a true sign of weakness in the chart as of right now. Could you argue that this is looking like a rising wedge? You could argue that. So maybe it may gap down in the pre-market, but it could always try to rebound depending on what happens with PMI and depending on what happens with lots of shorts. I'm going to be careful with Apple, but it is trying to push up. It still looks strong, so we're going to have to wait and see how it reacts to resistance. If it breaks down, watch 186.5, 186, 185, and then 182.5 and 180 as supports. For now, it's looking strong, so I'm going to be very patient with this, and there's no true sign of weakness, so there's no point in turning very bearish right now. Still holding up, so we'll have to wait and see on it. For Nvda, it's holding up kind of in the middle. If it wants to be bullish, we're going to be watching this thing hold above 430. If it does so, watch 433, then 435, and then after that comes 440. If it breaks to the downside, you're going to be watching support around this 425 level. If that fails us, watch 422, 420, and then 418 and 414 after that. So far, it's just trading sideways in this range, going back and forth and back and forth. It's not really doing anything significant, and it's likely going to continue to range trade for quite a while, not really doing much. We're just going to watch this carefully. I'm anticipating that it may pump with the market a little bit tomorrow and retest 435, but other than that, it's very, very tight. Now, for Google, same thing. It's getting a very, very nice push right here, forming a bullish divergence right over here during the pre-market. This would have been a very nice trade. Continuing to hold up. We're going to be watching if this thing can get to 25. If it breaks down, watch 27 to potentially 30. If it breaks down, watch support at 123.5, 122.7, 120, 119, followed by even lower levels than that. In my opinion, there's no true sign of this thing really breaking down or breaking up, so there's no point in taking a position like that. When it pushes up this high, it may gap down a little bit and then try to continue pushing. I think that as long as the market holds up, there's a good chance Google is going to try to hold up with it. So I am leaning the direction that's going to try to hold these levels for tomorrow and maybe even push more if it breaks resistance. Amazon is continuing to break out. I mean, there's no true sign of major weakness on it just yet. There's not even like any, I mean, there is technically, you could argue there's a bearish divergence developing, but there's no confirmation of it because this is not really rejecting just yet. It's just continuing to hold up. If you look at the 4-hour time frame on Amazon, it's continuing to trend up and up and up. There's nothing really bearish about this chart. It just keeps going up. And for that reason, the only thing I could say is there's a bearish divergence developing. So it is going to get a rug pull in the future, most likely, but there's just no sign of it happening yet. So there's no point in taking that position, meaning it hasn't rejected yet. There's no sign of the bearish divergence playing out. It's just in the process of developing, but I'm just not really seeing it. So for that reason, if it keeps breaking out, we're going to be watching 132.5 to potentially about 135. If it breaks down, watch 128, 126, 125, 123.85, and then 120 as support. I think Amazon looks strong, so it might gap down a little bit, then just try to continue pushing. It still looks very strong, so there's no confirmation of it weakening just yet. Meta was looking strong. I told you guys this in the intraday video, and it still got a nice close. If it keeps pushing, we're going to be watching 287.5, then 290 after that if it continues going, and it could even break above that. If it breaks to the downside, watch support around 283, 282.5, 280, 279, 276, and then 272 to about 270 after that as support. There's not much weakness here. It's just continuing to hold up very nicely. So we're about to get a bullish cross in the 4 hours. So there's a good chance it's going to either gap down a little bit, then continue pushing, or just continue pushing from here. I have both bullish and bearish cases mapped out, but like I said, it looks more bullish than bearish. So for Tesla, just to be clear, guys, Tesla is showing some strength. It looks more bullish than bearish in my eyes, but I need some confirmation to turn more bullish on this. I need confirmation. I need to see this thing break and hold 265 nicely. If it does that, I'm going to be watching 270. If it gets above 270, this thing is going to go shooting up. It has a lot of potential to continue doing it. But like I said before, I have both the bull and bear cases mapped out, but I want to let you guys know I am leaning more bullish right now. looking at the current trend and looking at the technicals. I'm leaning more in that direction, so we'll just wait and see if that plays out. But wait for confirmation and trade based off these levels, trade based off your indicators, and let the charts tell you what to do. Thank you for listening. Have a great day, everyone. Remain calm, cool, and collected, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Tesla to the moon because the long term is still incredibly bright alongside the whole markets. And peace out.